Hello and welcome back to another episode of The Travelling Sewist, where I, Lexie, travel Australia, take you to inspirational places, talk to inspirational people, and they talk their inspiring stories. Welcome to episode 2. Now, this episode in particular was done via Zoom, as the way of the world, sometimes things happen and we just could not meet up in person. So this episode you may prefer to listen to as more of a podcast style, so feel free to just pop it on in the background while you perhaps sew yourself. Hope you enjoy. Hi Megan, how are you going?
Good, thanks. How are you?
Good. Thank you so much for being on my channel today. Do you want to introduce yourself and tell us what it is that you do?
Sure. So my name's Megan. I'm a 35-year-old mum of 2, and I'm a sewing teacher and content creator for all things sewing and creative. I've been sewing since I was like 8 or 9, I guess. I really enjoy teaching others how to sew, to find their sewing passion, and just really do something for themselves. I think we don't get a lot of time to do that. So yeah, it's just really nice to teach others how to be creative.
Sorry to interrupt, but in this episode you will find a code word hidden. So make sure you comment it below, and this one is worldwide, guys. So anyone that watches this video, please comment the code word and you will win with Megan a one-on-one. Good luck. That's awesome. Have you done any other careers in the time?
So my background's graphic design. So I've got that kind of graphic, artsy, creative mindset. So I did an apprenticeship in graphics when I was straight out of school. And then I've also had my own business doing wedding invitations and stationery. So I wrapped that up after I had my daughter. It was just a bit hard doing the wedding industry with a young child. So I haven't done that for 6 years now. I've been really enjoying sort of sinking my teeth into the sewing space and teaching others how to sew.
Have you been doing the sewing since then, sort of thing as well, like in a more of a business kind of way?
No, that's evolved quite naturally, actually. I took a big break from sewing when I was like probably 21. I sort of didn't sew much up until I had our daughter when I was late 20s. And then I discovered clothes for her. The beautiful and endless world of boutique special clothing for girls. So I started sewing lots for her, which was really, really cool. And then I had a bit of a break again when I had our son. That was mainly, I was just really sick when I was pregnant with him. So I didn't know we were having a boy. I was desperate for a girl because I couldn't wait to make more little girl clothes. And I was like, what do I make a boy? So when I had him, I was like, what do you make a boy? But I've since discovered there's quite a lot of really cool boy clothes, and it's really funky to have them be dressed up cute. So I started sewing for him again, and I hadn't really delved much into sewing for myself. So I was like, adult clothes, there's more to it. And it's a lot more fabric. And as we know, fabric isn't cheap. So I was a bit like, I don't know about that. But I suffered postnatal depression after my son, and I started doing a little bit more for myself. And I was actually like, this is really cool. Like, this is fun sewing for yourself. And because I was breastfeeding, there's not a lot of like stylish breastfeeding clothes. So I mainly started sewing so I could have nice breastfeeding clothes. And it's just grown from there. And I started an Instagram channel. I used to be Gem, Ted and Me, because my daughter's name is Gemma. My son's name is Theodore. We call him Ted. So I called it Gem, Ted and Me. And I was just sharing what I made. I liked following other accounts that shared their things. So I started sharing what I was making. It's just grown from there. People following, enjoying the content I put out, enjoying the photos I put up. And yeah, it's just kind of naturally evolved. And I enjoy connecting with people on Instagram and Facebook and teaching from that. So yeah.
That's fabulous. No, and I really like when I came across your Instagram, I was like, "Ooh, you've got some really cool ideas." And then when I found out that you actually knew what you were talking about as well, like you actually have that educational background, I was like, okay, I can actually learn some seriously good stuff off of this one.
Yeah.
And then we got chatting, and then I was like, you're a lovely person as well. You are so willing to help with anything as well, which is so, so good. And that's what Instagram's about. I don't know about you, but that's what I love about it is the connections that you can make. And you make like best friends that are online.
Yeah, I've made some great friends through just connections on Instagram, other businesses and other sewists like yourself. And yeah, it's just a really inclusive, beautiful community, I think.
And are you comfortable with talking a little bit more about your postnatal depression?
Yeah. Yeah.
I was never fully diagnosed with it. I have a feeling that without the sewing, I think I would have fallen into that category.
Yeah.
Did you find out your diagnosis and then start sewing, or did it all just sort of come about, or?
No, so I had my son at the start of the second lockdown in Melbourne, which we all know was a tough time, July 2020.
Okay, yep.
And it was just chalk and cheese, the experience I had from my daughter to the experience I had from my son. We couldn't get help. We couldn't get support. I got mastitis in the first 2 weeks. I couldn't get someone to come and help us with breastfeeding. I couldn't go to the doctor to get help. Like, it was just a really tough time, which a lot of Melbourneites know. And I think having a baby was also, it's tough.
Yeah.
I reached out to my maternal child health nurse and I said, things are not going well. I'm going down a pretty dark hole. So they escalated it to the enhanced maternal child health nurse, who said, I think you would really benefit from going to a mother baby unit.
Okay.
So there weren't a lot that were running, but they had a spot at the Austin parent infant program, which is a inpatient program that you stay in. And I was there for 3 weeks. So that was, it's not a sleep school because it's about the mother. It's mothers who are having mental health issues.
Right.
And yeah, I was there for 3 weeks, which was also tough because you couldn't have any visitors. The husbands were allowed to come, but my daughter couldn't come. None of my family could come visit or anything like that. But that probably saved us. Like, I really needed to be there.
Yeah.
So by the end of that, I sort of came out of that realizing that I needed to do something. Like, I needed to sort of get my mojo back a little bit. And yeah, that's when I sort of just started dabbling in a few little bits and pieces for my son. And that's when I was like, I want like me clothes. I want to be nice. Yeah. So yeah, I started just doing more of that, and I realized I really like sewing for myself. And then it was not a matter of saving fabric for my daughter or my son. It was like, I want this. It helped keep me sane, I guess.
Yeah.
And it just really gave me a bit of purpose, which, a lot of Melbourne people would know we didn't have a lot of purpose. So yeah, it just gave me something to do, really. And I find that when I am sewing, that's my mindfulness. So when I'm sewing, all I'm thinking about is the next step in the pattern, the next seam I have to do, So I'm not thinking, how many cases of COVID today, or I need to do this for my son. I need to order that from the grocery store. Like, I'm just focused on the sewing, and that's my mindfulness.
Yeah, and that is 110% at me as well. Like, you are speaking the words out of my mouth. Like, you're taking the words right out of my mouth, honestly.
Yeah.
I did notice on Instagram the other day, you did mention that you were having a bit of a harder day as well. And obviously they still happen, those hard days.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
Yeah. When you go, hang on a second, I need to go sew?
No, it's more, they're obviously a lot fewer and far between now. And, everybody has hard days. Things just build up or pile up on you. And to be honest, part of that was I'd forgot my medication for 2 days. So it
Oh.
was probably a little bit hormone induced as well. But, you know, I just felt really overstimulated. The kids were really full on. My daughter had had a massive week at school. So she was like, just like buzzing. And I was like, I can't do this. So it was more, I just needed to sort of bring everything back to basics.
Yep.
And yes, sewing does help because, again, then I'm not thinking about the million other things I've got on. It's just what line next, what's the next step in the pattern, you know. So that, it's again that mindfulness, and just now it's more just accepting those days. You know, sometimes even sewing doesn't help. Sometimes you've just got to sit with it and go, it's a hard day today, do what you got to do to get through. Tomorrow's a new day.
Yeah. Thank you for being yourself on socials and stuff like that as well, because I know you love your dressing gown.
Oh yeah, I love my dressing gown.
And I love that you're so unapologetically, I'm in my dressing gown. Too bad, people, because it is so cold here in Melbourne sometimes. I don't blame
so cold. And that dressing gown actually has a little bit of not emotional attachment, but symbolic, like, what's the word? Sentimental value.
Oh,
so
yeah.
that was my pa's dressing gown. And when he passed away, I just was like, yeah, I want it. So every time I wear it, I feel like I've got my pa, you know. Like, my husband got me a beautiful dressing gown as well, but to be honest, I wear that one all the time because I'm like, it's just a little piece of my pa that I'm kind of like, you know, is with me. So yeah, that's a lot why I wear my dressing gown too. And it's bloody cold in Melbourne.
Yeah. Oh, that's really nice. See, my machines actually were given to me by my nana. So every time I sew, I always think of my nana. All right, let's talk a little bit more about sewing. You said that you did a lot of girl sewing, but now you're doing a lot more boys sewing. Have you got a favorite boy and girl pattern, or even one for yourself, or one of each even?
Well, boy patterns I quite like overalls. I think overalls are really cute. Anything in linen is also really cute on little boys. Tada have a romper called the Elliot romper. I made that in a beautiful, like, sandy, tanny linen when he was probably 1. Super, super cute. I need to get another one of those. For girls, I love dresses. Any kind of dress. I started with a lot of Tada patterns. I find them incredibly easy to follow. Lauren's an amazing designer. Like, she's just got a lot of really cool patterns. The baby tea party was one of the first ones I sewed. For myself, I've sewn quite a lot of the Ali and Mac Trey Bell dresses. I like the cut on me. Like, for me, I'm quite large busted. So when I have like a V-neck or a cross front dress, it's just very flattering on me. Like, I've got a mum tum, I've got a post-Melbourne COVID lockdown tummy, like, you know, something that kind of fits under the bust and flares out and skims over my mum tummy is always helpful. So I really like the Trey Bell. Love Notions have quite a few patterns as well that I really like.
So let's talk about, so you've done some strike team work in the past. What's it like being in a team, doing all of that fun stuff?
I love it. I love striking. It's really fun. It is a lot of work, I'll be honest. Up front, it can be a lot of work. I think a lot of people think, oh, wow, free fabric, like, that's really cool. And it is, like, it is fun to get fabric and make what you want from it. However, there is a lot of process. So whether you're buying the pattern for it, you know, if you don't have a projector, you're printing it out, you're sticking it together, you're cutting it out, you're sewing it, you're then taking photos, you're editing the photos, you're committed to doing promotional stuff. So, you know, you're making sure that you're promoting on the days that you need to. There is quite a lot of work involved. So it's not something you can do if you don't have the time. I really think if you're going to strike, you need to have the time. But in general, like, I love working with companies to help bring awareness to their brands. Obviously, a lot of the companies I strike for are Australian because that's where we get our fabrics from. So I love helping Aussie businesses sort of elevate their business and get awareness out there. And there's some incredible Australian fabric companies out there. So it's really, really nice to let people know that there's something other than Spotlight too. Like, you know, Spotlight is really the only shop we have here. I mean, there's Lincraft as well, but a lot of Lincraft shops have shut down. And there's a lot of little boutique bricks and mortar places, but a lot of those are quilting based, and quilting isn't really garments. Like, you can use quilting cotton, but it's quite heavy. So in terms of fashion and apparel fabric, you've really only got Spotlight as a bricks and mortar store to go to. So it's nice to work with Aussie businesses and kind of try to bring awareness around the quality that they have, and bring awareness around why that quality means they cost more than Spotlight.
The Spotlights are like our Joannes, aren't they, in America?
Yes,
and stuff like that. Is there an
Yeah.
equivalent in the UK or anything like that?
I believe there is. I'm not sure what it is. But even like the Joannes, like, I've been to a Joanne store. We went to America in 2018, and top of my list was going to Joanne stores. So I mapped out like where they all were, and when we were driving and when we were going around.
Yeah.
But even Joanne stores seem to have more quality than what Spotlight stores do. So I found that their cotton lacquer particularly was better quality than most of the stuff we have here. They obviously have a lot more licensed stuff in their Joanne stores than we have here. It was fun. Like, I bought quite a bit.
So was that sort of finding all of these amazing Australian stores?
Yeah, it was. Like, I'd bought from some Australian stores prior to going. So I really started sewing again in about 2017.
Okay.
And then we went to America in 2018. Okay. So I'd bought a bit of stuff there, but I'd already previously bought from like Wattle Hill and Ruby Jam. I would have bought from Dizzy Daisy. I definitely wanted to go to the Joanne store, but yeah, they had a lot of licensed stuff, which is obviously hard to come by legitimately here.
I want to know who sort of inspires you. How do you get your inspiration?
I look a lot through Instagram, stuff posted on like the Australian inspiration and advice page. Yeah, on Facebook. Yep. I also, because I test a lot of patterns as well, so I'm a pattern tester for quite a number of companies. So I'll often get a lot of inspiration through their tester photos or chats with other people through the striking. So I'm currently doing a bit of strike work for Clover & Co Fabrics, as well as Frankie Bear Fabrics. I've done some stuff for Ruby Jam. I've done some stuff for Wattle Hill. So looking at, their other inspiration. I'm really good at seeing a piece of fabric and then I just imagine what it's going to become. And often what I imagine is how it looks. Like, by the time I finish making it, it looks how I've imagined. Like, I know some people, they can't correlate how that's going to work, but I found I'm quite good at, like, I'll see something and I'll go, yeah, that'll look good as the Betty Sinclair, like the Sinclair Betty wrap dress. And then I make it and I'm like, yeah, that looks really good. Like, I'm really happy with how that turned out. So a lot of the inspiration, I guess, comes from the fabric itself, and what it kind of speaks to me, if you want to talk about it sort of in that sense. But, as you can see, I've got quite a lot that has spoken to me and I still haven't had a chance to make it. So sometimes they speak different things.
Look, I think everyone has that stash in there hidden away. As I know, I've just done a declutter not that long ago because we moved into a caravan, so I had to, but mine didn't look probably any less than yours right now. What's your biggest fear of sewing?
I think one of the biggest fears I have is that the picture I have in my head is not how it's going to turn out when I make it, because I would just be so sad if that fabric got wasted per se. So like I said, I'm very good at visualizing it, but sometimes it doesn't turn out that way, or it's a new pattern and the pattern just doesn't suit me. Like, it's, particularly pants are really hard to get right. You should always make a toile when you're trying to make pants, particularly more fitted pants. Track pants aren't so bad, where there's a lot of ease built in, but anything that's a little bit more fitted, you should definitely make your toiles. So it's more when I make something and I'm like, it just doesn't look as good as I hoped it would. So yeah, in terms of fears in general though, I try not to let things stop me. So if it says advanced pattern, and yes, I'm an advanced sewer now, but I try not to let that influence me. Like, honestly, if you can sew a straight line, you can sew anything. You've just got to take your time and be willing to take a chance. I've got a student at the moment who's made 2 things before, and now she's making a Regency ball gown for an upcoming event she's got.
Oh my gosh. Amazing.
And she's doing great. You know, she's got my help because I'm
Mhm.
helping teach her.
Yeah,
But, you know, like she's gone from sewing nothing to a Regency ball gown.
that's amazing.
So if you've got the balls to do it, I always say just give it a go. And don't start with your good fashion fabric. Start with, you know, something that doesn't matter as much. So you know you can, you know, make some mistakes and learn from it. So yeah, I would say always just give something a go. But for me personally, it's more if I try something and I'm like, oh, it just doesn't look as good as I hoped it would, you know.
Yes, but as some very esteemed people in our community do say, there's always more fabric.
There is always more fabric.
And I'm pretty sure you know that from what's behind you.
Yes, I do.
I know that you have a projector, and I know you've encouraged me to get a projector because of the production that you can get out of it. Are there any tutorials or anything that we can look up for that?
So I joined the Projectors for Sewing Facebook group. There's an Australian version as well, but the Projectors for Sewing is worldwide. There is so many amazing people in there. I encourage you to join it. Even if you don't have a projector, just to kind of like lurk in there and get an idea about it. But honestly, my sewing game upped 1,000-fold when I got a projector. Like I was an okay sewist before, but when I got my projector and I started, like my output just went through the roof. Like it's all practice. How do you get better at a skill? You practice. So when I started making more and more garments, like I upskilled, I looked up how to do things. I just got better and better and better. So definitely a projector was a game changer for that. It just takes out a lot of the mundane tasks. So I would find I'm like, oh, I want to make my son a new t-shirt, but you know, he's grown out of that size. So I'll have to trace it out and do it again or cut it out. Or whereas this, I just load up my projector, select his size, cut it out, and away I go. I've had times where I've cut out 7 patterns in one go that I've never tried before, you know, like 7 brand new patterns. And then over the weekend, I've sewn them all up. So a big block for me before was I've got to go to Officeworks and get it printed AO, or I need to print it out and then I'll spend an evening sticking it together. Like it's just so much work. So to cut that out and just load up the pattern, start cutting it out, like, and be sewing within 20 minutes, half an hour is just life-changing.
Did you find it hard to sort of start it up or anything like that?
It is a challenge to get your mind around it. So I probably had it sitting there for 2 months before I got it out of the box because I'm like, oh, what's this projector stuff? Like, I don't need a projector. Like, it's a bit of a waste. But this projector was on Marketplace and my friend had sent it to me. It was an ex-school one. She said, oh, it's quite a good one. You know, like it was $250. I had a friend it was on the other side of the city. So I'm like, I don't want to drive to the other side of the city. But I had a girlfriend going to pick something up like around the corner from it. So I was like, oh, do you mind like picking this up for me? She's like, yeah, sure. And then it stayed at her house for a month before I, you know, got a chance to go and get it. But eventually when I got it out and sort of set it up, I was like, what is this? Like my mind was just like, how does this work? And I spent a lot of time on the Projectors for Sewing Facebook group reading their introductory guides. Like they've put together a whole guide. And this is, like, they're not paid to do it. They've just put it together for people to get information on. And I got it out and I was like, okay, I can do this. And slowly over time, I worked out sort of how to do it. And then I got the bug of just like, yep, this is amazing. I watched a lady on YouTube, Daily Sews and stuff. She has like an unboxing of a projector and she sets it up in front of you. She had a lot of really good tips. So I really recommend going to check out that Facebook group if you get a chance. They will convince you very quickly to get one.
I think you're convincing everyone right now. So I do believe you have a YouTube though yourself that you have done a bit of the projector stuff on, have you not?
Yeah, so I've done like an overview of it. I've put that on there. My YouTube is just Sew and Tell Australia. So that's where I hang out on YouTube. I think by the time this comes out, I will also have launched my Patreon.
Ooh.
So I'm launching a Patreon series, which will be exciting. So that's where I'll be able to connect with people a little bit more one-on-one,
Awesome.
and get some, education. And I'll have people coming on, much like you with your interviews. I'll be interviewing some people as well.
Awesome.
I'm actually probably going to interview the Daily Sews and stuff, Brianne. So yeah, I chat with her on Instagram. Another friendship that I've made.
Yeah.
So yeah, I might get her on my Patreon channel to have a chat about all things Projector, and she's very knowledgeable as well. So
All right. Well, I think we'll wrap it up there. Thank you so much.
my pleasure.
I honestly could talk to you probably for hours, but we don't have hours, unfortunately. But thank you so much. If anyone wants to find you, just give us a quick rundown where, how, and we can find you.
So I mainly hang out on Instagram. I'm Sew and Tell AU, but I also am on Facebook, Sew and Tell Australia, YouTube, Sew and Tell Australia, and my Patreon is Sew and Tell Australia as well.
Awesome. I'll put all of that information down in the description for you all, so don't stress too much. Thank you again, Megan, and I look forward to talking to you again maybe in the future when you've done a few more different things, because I think
Sounds good. Thanks, Lexie.
All right, bye.